Okay, you guys, so now we're going to move into the idea of quadratic equations. In the last section, we kind of saw that come up in the process of solving for a rational equation, and that one, fortunately enough, factored. But here we're going to do, starting in 1.3 and 1.4, is we're going to talk about solving quadratic equations in several different ways. And yes, I would like you to know how to do all of them. So just do not use the quadratic formula. It's a great, formula, but there are some skills that you're missing when you only use that. So make sure you're familiar with all the ideas. Okay, and like I said, we're kind of, I'm shooting 1.3 and 1.4, even though they have specific different modules. I'm kind of treating them the same because they're essentially over the same material. So the first thing we need to do is figure out, how do we know when we're actually looking at a quadratic equation? Recall for a linear equation, this is something, we have the form mx plus b, right? Variables in the numerator to the first power. For irrational, we're dealing with situations where we have a polynomial over a polynomial. So we saw this in 1.2. And quadratic equations, they basically take on the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Or you'll notice that the variable, right, is in the numerator. Right, so there's two variables here. They're both in the numerator, and our highest power is 2. So we're talking basically about degree 2 polynomials is what it basically comes down to. So there's your classic form, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And when you glance down further on this page, you'll notice, again, I see a degree 2 polynomial. So this is a quadratic, right? Another degree 2 polynomial, quadratic. Another degree 2. And then this one is not really written in this form, but if we were to expand this, right, we're eventually going to have that x being squared. So we do have x squared. We just haven't expanded out to look like this form. So this is still a quadratic. That is also a quadratic. And then this one, like letter B, we're multiplying here. And if we were to actually FOIL this out, we can see right away x times x would give us an x squared plus a lot of other terms. So this in its heart and soul, even though it's not written in this form, it is quadratic because it will result in a degree 2 polynomial. So that's how we know when we're looking at a quadratic. Now it turns out that there are several ways to actually solve quadratics. This is where it gets very interesting. In the last video, in the last section, you guys actually saw me use factoring, right? And what's known as pretty much the zero factor property. So this is probably one of the more famous ways to solve it, but unfortunately not everything factors, all right? So we need more. Another way to solve it is to use what's called the square root property. All right, and yet another way to do it is to use the quadratic formula, and again, that's probably a method that you guys are probably very familiar with. It's commonly used in high schools and other settings. And then another way, the actual nice pure math way, is to complete the square. And as usual, right, this involves a little bit of complication, but there's more math that's built on this idea than that idea there. As a matter of fact, historically speaking, we know that completing the square actually preceded the quadratic formula. So this is a very important thing. It's a skill builder. We'll use it for circles. We'll use it to rewrite expressions. When you guys move into calculus, you'll use it to do integrals and differentials. So we really need to understand how to complete the square, even though this is probably the hardest, all right, way to do the quadratic. But we'll focus on this for a little bit. And then, of course, we have the quadratic formula, square root property. Now, there's other ways. We could also use a graph, all right, which we'll take a look at next week. But for now, all right, for this week, right, I'm going to see you guys factoring. I'm going to see you guys using the square root property. I'm going to see you guys using the quadratic formula. I'm going to see you guys completing the square. So make sure you're familiar with all those 4 types. And on that note, what we'll do first, since I'm pretty sure experience tells me a lot of students either forget or they never have seen the completing the square process. So I'll actually cut away to another video. There's our groundwork. We're concentrating on completing the square, and then we'll actually put all this up in action with some situations. All right, so see you guys in the next video.